Hello YouTube. Today we're going to build an Imperial Guard Astra Militarum mech suit. Here he is. So I've built 4 of these now. This video is going to be showing the third one that I built, and they're coming out really well. I'm going to do some more. I've got 6 of these Ambots, which is the main kit you need, obviously, and you'll also need a heavy bolter from the all-lock weapon sprue. Luckily you get 2 on every sprue, so you can make 2 Ambots and then 2 from the kit, 2 from the all-lock sprue, and then you'll just need a Cadian torso from somewhere. I used the field ordnance batteries because I didn't use all the torsos when I was building those. So the Ambot is such a versatile kit. I think you've probably seen people using these and converting them for absolutely everything. There's two separate poses with the Ambot, but they're quite versatile, and you can kind of move them and manipulate the pose quite a lot, which is really good, particularly when you're making a nice large unit of 6 of these Bullgrin Ambot mech suit things. Yeah, the initial build, you'll only need these little bits just to kind of get the initial build all set up. So build your Cadian torso, so we know how we've got to make it fit, and then get the 2 sides to the Ambot body assembled. And all we're going to do first is see how much we need to take off. So you'll see we don't actually need to take that much off the inside of the shoulder joints, I imagine those are, to make the Cadian fit. And then it's a lot of trimming and chopping. It's the old adage of measure twice, cut once, or at least try to just kind of eke away at how much you're trimming off. I trim off a little bit too much on this one, particularly on the left hand side. There's the really nice cog on the left. And it's quite nice once you've built one. The first one that I did was, as always, it's the perfect one, the first one. And then you try to replicate it, and it doesn't quite match up as well. But the first one I did managed to leave a little bit of that cog work on the left-hand side, whereas on this one you'll see I'm kind of removing quite a lot of it with this initial cut, and then just tearing it out, because everything on the inside is going to get smoothed out, so that you just rip it off. But that's about how much you need to remove. The more of these I've built, the more I realise that you can take off a little bit more at the bottom corners, so you don't have to take it off evenly. And I've got 2 more to build to make my unit of 6, and I think I'm going to try on the next one. I'm just going to try and take off the corner, that bottom corner on the inside of the body, to see if it can just fit the torso a little bit neater, and then that will probably allow it to leave a bit more of the cog work, if you like, around the inside of the body of the Ambot. So yeah, now as you can see, we're just trimming off the bottom of the Cadian torso. There's really not a lot of torso that we need. The only bit that you can see, and once you pose it in there, you'll see how much you need. You need the torso up to where the flak armor is, and that is about it. Like, you don't need the belt, you don't need everything on the back. The only reason why we're using a full torso, as in the back side of it as well, is for the rear of the neck. You just need somewhere nice for the head to sit. So a lot of the torso is actually just kind of trimmed away and cut up. It's one of the easiest ways to remove little amounts of plastic is just scraping and angling your knife and just removing tiny little bits as a scrape, rather than cutting them off. And the same, I've just got a big file just to smooth out any last little bits. Stick the front on. As well, as soon as you stick the front on, you'll be able to see a lot more where the torso fits in and how much you need to remove. All of mine have got slightly different angles of the torso. Some of them are leaning forward. I think the first one I did is the one that's leaning forward the most, and then the last one I did sits. So this one actually sits quite a long way back. Sits quite back in the torso, and then depending upon which way it is, so you can see me there kind of pushing it back and then pulling it forward. Depending on how far forward the torso leans in this part, will depend or will adjust how you pose the final model. Yeah, always keep your worktop nice and tidy. Just cleaning out all the dust. Yeah, so the actual Ambot is it's quite kind of leaned over. It's quite hunched in its normal form. So one of the things that I did, I straightened up the torso a little bit when I was building it, because otherwise you can't quite really see the Cadian inside it. So I've lent the torso back a little bit on the waist, just so you can see it in a little bit further. So that's just one of the other things that you will get when you're building this. Just kind of choose how far you want the torso to be sticking out and how far you want it to be leaning forwards. It's always handy to have everything together so that you can pose it and have a look at it before you finally glue everything in. We'll do the legs again in a second. So this is the back part of the Ambot, and this just allows us to start getting the height and how low it needs to sit, because once we put the torso in there, we can put this roof, the top armour panels on, and you can get a good idea on how low it needs to sit, so that we get a little bit of clearance on the head, and also the angle at which it's going to look. So this one, just again, this is just accidental on how it's been sanded and how I've removed little bits. It's looking a little bit over to the left hand side, so that's how I'm going to do it. So leaning over to the left hand side, we've got a little bit of tacky substance, so we can mock up very quickly how this is going to look. And I love doing this. Like a lot of my conversions will be always end up being quite dynamic in their poses. One of my favourite things to do is to twist a model at his torso. So twist at the waist, and it gives all sorts of different poses optional. You can have a leg going forwards, either the front leg going forwards or the front leg going backwards, following the torso twist, and then it gives a little bit of a dynamic look either way. So you can see the torso twist here. You can either have that front foot forwards or the front foot backwards here, and we actually go with the front foot being forwards. I think the pose just looks a little bit better, because then he's balanced and he's firing or just kind of balanced on that front foot. It just kind of grounds him a little bit further, and you can also see here now as well how I'm just leaning the torso back a little bit on the peg. So rather than cutting the peg off, as I was actually about to do, we can use the peg to just give us a little bit of a block to lean the torso back on, and you'll see in a second how I can how I fill that gap as well. Just find some little bits of excess plastic and just kind of stuff it in there. It's very hidden underneath there, so it's not something that you're going to see. It's one of those, I try to make my conversions, when I'm doing conversions, I try to make them as neat as I can in terms of how everything fits, and And then there are certain bits like this which I make allowances for. It's like I'm never going to look at underneath the torso at this little part of the waist, so I can leave a gap there. You can see the gap already, so I can leave that gap there and I can fill it with something else. It's never going to get seen. If all else fails as well, you can just cover it in weathering and some dirt and some grime, and it kind of all goes away. So you'll see, this is what I'm going to block it with. I'm going to fill that gap with a little bit of an offcut of plastic, and when we lean it back, you'll see the gap that we can push it into. And the glue I'm using is great for this as well, because you can kind of melt it in there as well. It's an old model railway glue that my papa used to use from a company in Derby, in Matlock, called Slaters. Yeah, we're just filling that and allowing the glue to melt the plastic in there. Just filling the gap up. And again, this is just so that the torso sits a little bit more vertical, so you can see inside it. The Ambot itself is very hunched. I think it's got that hunched back as well. So the hunched over look has got a very distinct look to it, but it doesn't really lend itself to having a little torso in there as well, because the more hunched over it is, the less you actually see it. Also the hunched over canopy as well really leans over the top of the head and blocks that off as well, so we're going to rectify that later on. So with the angle that I've done it all, I was showing up the arm there. I was just kind of putting the arm up to the body, and I wanted to do this one shooting. The other two that I've done one kind of stalking, one with his shield out. I want to do one very much hiding behind his slab shield, whereas this one I really wanted to do like a much more of a shooting pose. So that's why I'm trying to get that left arm, or the right arm as it is, right out in front, so it's posed with the gun shooting. And I've actually ordered some muzzle flares as well. I'm converting a Morven Val at the moment, and I've done the same with her. So she's leaning forwards and shooting with her heavy bolter. So I've ordered some muzzle flares to go in with her, and also on this mech suit. So just trimming away little bits here. The little support handle on this fits really nicely just up underneath the claw of the Ambot here. So it's just a case of just trimming off the excess little bits of the knobs and the nodules here, and then it glues on really well. It fits really. It does just fit. There are these little happy accidents. Like the handle for this one just sits just underneath the wrist on the claw. It's fantastic. Little bits like that kind of help tie things together really well. So that's the heavy bolter. And yes, I will drill the. Actually, I don't drill the barrel. I spin my knife around in there and just kind of cut it out with the knife. Sometimes my drill bits are a little bit too far away, and I can't find my pin vise. So if you're very careful and you're using an older blade that hasn't got if you use a new blade to spin and cut the barrel in, a lot of the time what you'll find is it will snap the tip of the blade off, because they're very pointy and they're not quite as tough on the end. So I always tend to use an old blade and just kind of spin it around in there. Now, the fit of all these parts is very good in terms of how much variety you can get. So there's no real ball and socket joints on any of this, and there's definitely not a ball and socket joint on the arm here. And in fact, what you'll see is we can use a similar sort of technique that we did with the waist, just kind of blocking in and filling in gaps with a little bit of plastic, because it's not quite going to get the angle that we need with the shoulder to be able to have the gun, because I like, if they are shooting, I always like to try and have the gun horizontal in a direction that the model is trying to be shooting at. Otherwise, the model is holding the gun a little bit lower. It's walking around. But if it's shooting, I really think that it has to be a what's the word? Like a very there's a bit of a time jump there. Just me holding the pose and knocking it off as well. So knocking the gun off there was just so that it wasn't weighing this down. I wanted to hold that on there, hold the shoulder on, so I was just trying to knock it off so that it wasn't going to weigh it down any further. Yeah, getting back to the pose here. I always like to try and have the gun having a very obvious pose, a definitive kind of I am shooting in this direction. So I always try to have the gun horizontal to the ground, and then also I always try to twist the head so that it's looking down the barrel of the gun as well. So he's aiming and he's along that barrel. And it's not quite a little bit of hair getting in the way. It's not quite. It doesn't quite kind of glue in at the right angle here. You can see it's still pointing down a little bit. So when we glue that on, the glue that I use, that Mech pack stuff, is so good at holding the pose. And see, look at that, that's so cool. I'll just get the focus. There we go. The glue is so good at holding the pose that you can make the join and then kind of tweak it afterwards, and the glue just kind of stretches the plastic a little bit, and then you can fill any gaps that you need. But very deliberate. I like the angle and the pose of the gun. I always try to make as deliberate as I can if I'm trying to get the model in a firing position. Yeah, it's a cool pose. I like this pose. This is probably after the first one. So the first one I do like the first one because he's stalking. He's hiding behind the slab shield a little bit, and the slab shield, the way I've painted it up as well, the slab shield and his chest is very much the focal point. But I do like the pose on this one. I'm looking forward to painting this. This one's going to be a really cool little pose, particularly with the muzzle flare when the muzzle flare gets in. So you will definitely see some pictures of that. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter to catch up with that when they're finished. And here's the slab shield. So the slab shield, this is the get my words out. It's a shoulder shield. Try and say that 10 times fast. So it's the shield that goes on the top of the shoulder on the Ambot. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's like a frag shield or something, but it's perfect for the slab shield for the Bullgrin, and it fits absolutely perfectly. Just the little nodule. There's a nice little nodule on the top. If you have that as the top side, it sits really neatly on the back of the wrist. It just needs a little bit of trimming to remove some stuff. You'll notice, I always say this when I'm using a knife, you'll notice my fingers are always kind of jammed together, so my knife really can't slip very far. I talk about this quite a lot on my Twitch channels as well. But yeah, it's just got some nuts protruding out of the top of there, and then you take the peak off as well from the back of the wrist, and then it just allows this shield just to glue straight on. So a little bit of glue on the top of that, just to tack it on there, and then you can spin it around and flood some glue in on the underside as well. And that's the nice little wrist-mounted slab shield. Now the only thing with these Bullgrin is the Bullgrin in the Astra Militarum Codex have two different types of shields. So they have a slab shield, and then they have another shield. The slab shield is the one that gives them a 2+ save, I think, and then there's another one that gives them a 4+ invuln. I've yet to find and come up with an idea to differentiate between the two shields. So that's one of the reasons why I'm holding off building my last two Bullgrin, because it is, if you're doing a full unit of 6 Bullgrin, it's quite nice to have at least one with the 4+ Invulns shield. So I'm holding off making those last 2 so that I can at least have one of those with the funky shield. So as soon as I figure out a way to make that, or alternatively, if you guys have an idea on how to use a larger shield, maybe it is just find one of the Bullgrin shields, grab one of the Bullgrin shields and stick them on. Yeah, I will try that, figure out how to make the larger shield, and then I'll finish building the last 2 for the unit. They're going to look really cool though. Very excited to see them done. So this is adding this gun pose on here. So you can see it, the glue takes. So if you hold it in there for a second, the glue takes, and then because the glue is melting the plastic, you can manipulate the pose a little bit, and it pulls the plastic around, but still keeps it in a intact sort of thing. Still keeps it glued, and then you can open up these little gaps. And this bit of plastic did not want to come off my brush, yeah, you can fill the gaps with a little bit of plastic, flood it with glue, melt it. I think people use sprue glue, which is you put bits of sprue in. It's usually Tamiya liquid glue, and you can make some sprue glue. I prefer just to get little offcuts of sprue from trimming the gates and trimming the mould lines off, and then filling them in as and when I need to. But here's the very deliberate pose, trying to make that nice and horizontal. With the underslung, it almost looks like very, very John Woo. So with the gun out to the side, and this is another reason why I wanted to use the Orlock heavy bolters as well, because they've got the ammo casing rather than an ammo belt. Heavy bolters usually, I think, seem to have an ammo belt, and it would have been really cool to have an ammo belt, but then equally I'd have had to have an ammo box for it to feed into somewhere, and then the ammo belt would have to be manipulated so that it would fit into there. Yes, I could probably find a resin one somewhere and grab 6 resin ones and then melt and bend them into position. But once I found that one, I was like, well, that kind of sorts all the problems out. Now this is the final little bit which needs kind of tweaking. This is the front of the top armor panel, and it has a couple of winches on either side, and then also it's got that the little light on the center. Now this is one of the things. If we put this one, I actually didn't. I should have shown you, but you can, when you're building it, you'll see when you're building it as well. If you just show it up, oops. If you were to put this on in its full entirety, it would create too much of a shelf, and it would hide too much of the Cadian soldier on the inside. So all I'm doing is I'm thinning it down a little bit, cutting it up, thinning it down. So I took off a vast proportion of the length, the depth of the last one, and then we're taking off a little bit on this one as well. You can't take too much off on this one because it's got the little light on the front as well. Yeah, we'll just cut and rip a little bit of this off and then tidy it up with the knife. But if these are too deep, it just really restricts and constricts the head of the Cadian. And it also blocks his view as well, so whether he's turning left or right. I do cheat a little bit, like if he's looking left, then I will thin down the panel which goes on the left a little bit more, and just kind of artistic license. And then if he's looking right, actually if he's looking right, you can thin it down a lot more because it's the part that doesn't have the light on it. So if you want to do your first one, I'd probably suggest making him look to the right to start with, and then you can put the winch on this one. Yeah, the light as well. This goes directly over his head. So all I'm doing is you just trim, follow the lines of the panels, trim this right down, and then we're going to split it pretty much in half, and just literally just half the size of it. I don't do a very good job here either, so do a better job than me. But all we're going to do is we're going to get the knife right in the middle. We're going to push down nice and slowly. You don't push down hard. If you push down hard, it goes all over the place. That's when you start slipping. I go down at a little bit of an angle when I start cutting this one, so it's a bit skew. I have to straighten it up a little bit afterwards, but literally just halfway, right in the middle, push down nice and slowly, rocking just so that it cuts evenly, and then it flies out. Now you'll see when we're putting it on, that's the wrong part. When we're putting it on, it's just much less intrusive on the on the little Cadian head. It's a nightmare when you're trying to mock things up. But yeah, it's much less intrusive. That is half the width of half the depth that it usually would be. So if it was any deeper, it would be absolutely towering over the top of the Cadian head. But even there, you can see we've cut that back, and there's a much more clearance, much more visibility out for the poor little soldier who's in his now mech suit. And we're going to glue these on. I actually find them easier to kind of trim and tidy up once they're glued on, so I tend to glue them on and then tidy them up afterwards. Doing a little bit now. Oh, this is on the inside, so it is easier just to kind of smooth out this inside edge before that bit's glued on. But the front face, you can clean up the front face when it's glued on quite a bit easier. And you have in the kit you have a winch for both of these sides. So depending upon which side needs the clearance, needs the visibility, sort of thing. So because he's looking to the left, this soldier is looking to the left over this side, then I won't put the winch on this side, because then he'll have a hook hanging down in front of his face. So I always, that's another thing as well, I always put the winch hook on the side that the soldier isn't looking, just to kind of give him a little bit of visibility clearance as well. This is a little trick as well. So once you've sanded and trimmed a lot of the parts, you can, if you get a damp brush with some glue on, you can just remove all the little fluff that you get from sanding. It's not quite in focus. I'm very sorry about that. You're moving around when you're building. I will get better at that. But I say that these all came. This whole conversion came about mainly because I didn't really like the Bullgrin models. So I've done. Games Workshop very kindly sent me the Cadia Stands box, and I've been resisting Imperial Guard for years and years and years and years and years. I really like infantry-based armies. Like one of my favourite Necron armies back when I was playing in the tournaments was 60 Immortals. And some Necron warriors and a few little bits and bobs, and obviously Imperial Guard are really the ultimate infantry army, and I've resisted them for a long time now. But with the Cadia Stands box, I thought I would dive in, and I've gone with a city fight scheme, so the 122nd city fight, that sort of vibe and aesthetic, and I just didn't really like the Bullgrin models. And then we were talking on Twitch, on my Twitch channel, about all the different options that we could have possibly, and I nearly did some Goliaths. Oh, just very, very quickly here, so that pipe that I've just cut off the sprue, there's always going to be one side of the torso which is further out than the other, unless you're incredibly good and you flatten it out perfectly. But I'm not, and each of the ones that I've done, and also you can have a little bit of torso twist in there as well, just to give it a little bit more dynamic flexibility. So there's always going to be one side of the torso which is further away from the Ambot body, and without this little bit here, I don't know whether I take it out again, but without this bit, no I don't, I'll put the glue straight on now, but without that bit there, it looks very obvious that it's just a torso. So all I do is I just cover up the the one side which looks like it's further away than the other, then I'll just cover it up with this little bit of piping. Now there is only one of these bits of piping in the kit, so the second model that you do, what did I use? I used a strap from a las gun. Just cut the strap off at the buckle, so it still has the buckle on the strap, and then just bend it a little bit with your fingers, and then you can bend it over the shoulder. It's just to create a little bit of an illusionary gap filling sort of thing. It just hides the fact that torso is sticking right forward, and it hasn't got a shoulder going into the Ambot's joint. I've no idea how. I would imagine he's got like arms that go up inside the joint, something like that. I don't really know. The legs was the issue that I knew I would get lots of people on Twitter and Instagram saying, "Oh, where are his legs?" So I did come up with backstory for all of these guys about how they lost their legs in combat, very sadly. But the arms, I imagine the arms are going out into the Ambot arms somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So it was a big conversation on Twitter, actually, on Twitch, about what models I could use to represent the Bullgrin in my army, because I definitely wanted them. And I always thought that Astra Militarum should have some sort of mech suit. I mean, watching Aliens and Edge of Tomorrow and things like that, they're too cool not to have some sort of mech suit. And then a friend of mine sent me a picture of ones that he'd done, and all he'd done was put a Acadian head in place of the head on an Ambot, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I definitely need to do that. So that's the angle that I've ended up going. I've just kind of pushed it a little bit further and included the torso as well. And then I did one. Because it was just going to be the bodyguard Bullgrin for the command squad. So the command squad, you can add attaches to the command squad, and I was going to just do one, and he's come out so well. I was like, well, I just need to do more now, don't I? So I need to do a full unit. I need a full unit of these. So this is number 3. This is the third one I've built. I've since built another one as well. And later in the week, you will have a painting video on how I painted them as well. So they've been painted up in my 122nd colour scheme. So obviously the infantry are all in blue and grey camo, and then the tanks and vehicles and sentinels and things like that are just a little bit further away towards the grey side of blue as well. So I think they look really, really good when they're done as well. So last thing to do, the last thing to do is pick a head. Now this guy's shooting, and I wanted some sort of a yell. I was looking through all the heads. There's a couple of open mouth yell type heads. The ones with character I always find are the ones with things that are attached to their helmet. So there's a couple around here with cigarette packets and little nubbets attached to their helmet, and it's this one here that we're going to use. So we're just going to spin that one off the sprue. He's got his cigarette packet attached to the side of his helmet, and we're just going to drop that into the tack just to make sure that it's the right one. I think that's cool. just you can imagine all the Hormagaunts and Termagants like bearing down on him, and he's just unloading. Very, very Alien style. I think it's great. But then also that's you can see how the deliberate posing of the arm as well just really ties into that pose, and also how you removing the upper armour also helps as well. So that's him. Hope you enjoyed that one. I'll be painting these ones all up on Twitch, so make sure you follow me on Twitch. This is just adding all the little extra little bits. Yes, one last little bit. So the thumbs the thumbs on the claw, I use the mandibles from one of the heads. So the claws do come with a thumb, but I just think the mandibles work so well. So I tend to use the mandibles and just trim them off. And you can pose them whether the thumb is either open or closed on the claw. Just neaten it up, add a little bit of glue, and then the claw has got a little bit of a thumb on it as well. It's got a little bit of a nodule that goes up and registrates into the thumb that the kit comes with. So trim that one off, smooth it down, and then glue that on. But yes, please drop me a follow. There's going to be a lot more of these videos coming. I was talking on Twitter yesterday about how I want to do plenty more videos on here, plenty more videos on YouTube, and try and get some really cool, positive videos going around Warhammer 40,000, particularly with some of the new releases that are coming. I'm so excited with them all. It's absolutely great with the World Eaters and the possible rumours of 10th edition and what might be coming with that. Really, really exciting stuff. So yeah, please drop me a follow, subscribe, share, and drop a comment in as well. That'd be amazing. Tell all your friends about these cool conversions and paintings that we're doing on this channel. I stream pretty much 2, 3, 4 times a week on Twitch. So you can find me over there. I'm the easiest person to find on the internet. Just search Chris Frostin on Twitter, Instagram, or Twitch. And there you have the armoured mech suit. I can't wait to do it. The whole unit of these is going to look so cool. I'm also tempted to make another couple and put them on spaceship bases for boarding actions, and do like a little 500 point boarding action force with three Bulgrin charging down in their mech suits. It's so good. So there's the little base that I've done for it. Nice and simple. I'm trying to add lots of height to all my city fight bases. I am going to do a video on how I do the city fight bases as well. There's a few little tricks and sneaky bits which is very much grounding them in a city fight aesthetic, which I'm going to share with you all. So we've got plenty of videos to come, and there's the first one I did, all painted up. So that's the one that we're going to be doing the painting series on. So that video is coming very, very soon. He's very, very nearly done. And if you follow me on Twitch, you'll know that guy as Trevor. If you don't follow me on Twitch, drop me a follow and find out all about his story. It's been absolutely brilliant. Twitch has been writing his backstory. So yeah, thank you very much everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please tag me in any of these mech suits that you build yourself. Drop a comment below with any other ideas that you've got, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks very much. I'll see you at the next video. Cheers. Bye bye.